Intelligence is not only the ability to reason, it is also the ability to find relevant material in memory and to deploy attention when needed. Daniel Kahneman. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is a groundbreaking exploration of the human mind, focusing on the two systems of thinking that guide our decisions. Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, takes us on a journey through decades of research, offering insights into how we think, why we make certain choices, and how our minds often lead us astray. His findings have wide implications for fields such as economics, psychology, and everyday life. This book is both deeply informative and highly entertaining, filled with real-world examples and fascinating psychological experiments. Let's dive into a 1,000-word summary that captures its essence with a few anecdotes and examples. System 1 and System 2, the two modes of thinking. Kahneman begins by introducing System 1 and System 2, the two main modes of thinking in the brain. System 1 is fast, automatic, and intuitive. It's the type of thinking you use when you see someone's face and instantly recognize them, or when you complete a phrase like bread and butter. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, deliberate, and analytical. This system kicks in when you solve a math problem or make a difficult decision. For example, imagine you're driving on an empty highway, System 1. You don't need to think much about what you're doing because it's so familiar, but suddenly you approach a busy intersection. Now, System 2 takes over as you navigate the more complex situation, checking traffic and making cautious decisions. Kahneman emphasizes that although System 1 is usually right, it can often lead us to quick, erroneous conclusions. System 2, while more accurate, requires much more energy and effort. Cognitive biases, when our mind plays tricks on us. One of the core themes in the book is that our brains are prone to cognitive biases, systematic errors in thinking. These biases often stem from our reliance on System 1, which tries to simplify complex information into something manageable. While this can be efficient, it can also mislead us. The availability heuristic. One key bias Kahneman highlights is the availability heuristic, which occurs when we judge the likelihood of something happening based on how easily examples come to mind. If we hear about a plane crash on the news, we might start to believe flying is unsafe, even though statistically it's much safer than driving. Kahneman shares the example of people who are more afraid of sharks than falling out of bed. This fear persists despite the fact that you are far more likely to die from a fall at home than from a shark attack. But because shark attacks are sensationalized in movies and news stories, our minds focus on that dramatic image, making it seem more probable than it is. Anchoring effect. Another fascinating bias is anchoring, our tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we encounter, the anchor, when making decisions. This bias can influence everything from negotiations to the way we think about prices. Kahneman describes an experiment where participants were asked to guess the percentage of African countries in the United Nations. Before answering, a random number was generated by a spinning wheel. Astonishingly, participants' answers were influenced by this random number. Those who saw a higher number guessed that more African countries were in the UN, demonstrating how we anchor our judgments even to irrelevant data. Did you learn something new from Daniel Kahneman? If you'd like to check out more of his work, click the link in the description for more info. Overconfidence, why we think we know more than we do. Kahneman also delves into the issue of overconfidence, particularly when it comes to making predictions about the future. We tend to be far too confident in our ability to forecast events, often ignoring how much uncertainty is actually involved. In one memorable experiment, he asked people to provide estimates for various uncertain events, like the date of Julius Caesar's assassination or the population of Papua New Guinea, along with a confidence interval for their answers. He found that people consistently overestimate their own accuracy, giving too narrow ranges for their estimates. Kahneman amusingly notes that experts, like stock market analysis, often fall into this trap. He recalls a study where financial advisors were asked to predict the performance of certain stocks. Despite their experience, most predictions were no better than random guesses. This shows that even highly skilled professionals can be overconfident, believing they have more control over the future than they actually do. Prospect theory: how we make risky choices. One of the most famous ideas from Thinking, Fast and Slow is Kahneman's prospect theory, which explores how people make decisions when faced with risk and uncertainty. Kahneman argues that we are more sensitive to losses than gains, a concept known as loss aversion. In other words, the pain of losing $100 is much stronger than the pleasure of gaining $100. For example, imagine you're offered a bet. You can either win $50 or lose $50 based on a coin flip. Most people would reject this bet, even though it's mathematically fair, because the fear of losing outweighs the potential pleasure of winning. Kahneman shows how this instinctive loss aversion drives much of human behavior, often leading us to make irrational choices, such as selling winning stocks too early and holding on to losing ones for too long. The planning fallacy: why things take longer than we think. Have you ever underestimated how long a project will take? That's the planning fallacy, another common cognitive bias. We're optimistic creatures, and we tend to believe that everything will go according to plan, ignoring potential obstacles. Kahneman recalls working on a curriculum guide for the Israeli Ministry of Education, where the team thought they'd finish the project in 2 years. 8 years later, it still wasn't complete. This was a classic case of the planning fallacy, where the team failed to consider unexpected delays and challenges. The impact of framing: how choices are presented matters. Kahneman also reveals how the way choices are framed can dramatically affect decisions. Even when two options are mathematically identical, how they're presented can change the way we feel about them. Imagine you are told that a medical procedure has a 90% survival rate. Sounds good, right? But if you're told that the procedure has a 10% mortality rate, it suddenly feels much scarier, even though the two statistics are the same. This demonstrates the power of framing in influencing our choices and perceptions. Conclusion: slow down, think better. By the end of the book, Kahneman's message is clear. We need to be aware of the limitations of our own minds. While System 1 helps us navigate daily life with efficiency, we should be cautious when making important decisions and learn to engage System 2 more often. Recognizing our cognitive biases and understanding how our brains work can lead to better decision-making, both in our personal lives and in larger societal contexts. Kahneman's work has profound implications, reminding us that we are not as rational as we think. But by becoming aware of our mental shortcuts, biases, and errors, we can strive for better thinking and ultimately better choices. Now that you've learned how your mind really works, pair that knowledge with our summary of How to Finish Everything You Start by Jan Yeager. See you guys soon!